Ever since that day, Sol and Deon hadn't said a word to each other. Sol threw his attention into his work, and Deon just disappeared for hours on end. Occasionally, they would show up for dinner at the same time, but neither said a word. Oh, come on, Deon. It's been 7 years. You could probably tell your brother the reason. He was open with you, explaining stuff. It made the room very uncomfortable, the silence only broken by silverware clinking upon dishes. I couldn't help wondering what happened between them after I hastily left that day. Then there's a curse that's yet to be broken. I'm so confused. There are too many things to think about. I flopped down on my bed. The sheets gave a loud poof before settling into a pile of wrinkles around me. It was tiring with all of these complications, yet not a single idea to make things simple again. I should sleep. Maybe that toy maker will give me a dream of the past. I looked around me, but it was all black. Hello? Am I dreaming? Aura. Spinning around, I noticed a tall, beautiful woman that hadn't been there only seconds before. Her long blonde hair shimmered with light and her hazel eyes sparkled. This is the first time I've actually... I don't know if they said what color her eyes were in Royal's Route. But Deon also has hazel eyes and blonde hair. And I'm even more suspicious that this toy maker's their mom. Or something. Or their aunt. I don't know. She looked young, but I could tell she was many, many years old. Her body was covered by a ragged cloak and old clothes, which didn't suit her beauty at all. Just to be sure, I pinched my arm. It didn't hurt. Hello, Aura. Do you know who I am? I shook my head. I did not recognize this woman at all. Try, dear. I'm sure you'll think of the answer. I tried to think of who she might be. As I stared at her, I noticed a few teddy bear charms hanging off the belt that peeked out from beneath the cloak. They looked very familiar. Ah, could you be? She nodded, seeming to read my thoughts. Yes, that's right. I'm the toy maker that came to the Deluxe Mansion 7 years ago. I apologize for seeming rude. I'm just not sure why you're here in my dream. The toy maker giggled, her face gentle with understanding. Somehow she wasn't as evil as I would have imagined. I came because I wanted to speak to you about the curse. I'm sure you have heard the story of why I cursed this place. You wanted to punish Lord Deluxe for his cruelty. Yes. He was a very cruel man, even to his own flesh and blood. I know because I've been watching them before I even came that day. Lord Deluxe had such amazing children, each special in their own way, and yet he chose to bind their wings instead of let them fly. The middle child has so much imagination and creativity in him. It shines so brightly in his eyes when he smiles. I couldn't agree more. Sol is an amazing designer. But the only time I've ever seen him genuinely smile was whenever he talks about designing clothes. I hoped that losing his status and having all those important to him reduced to childhood toys would teach him to appreciate what he had. I pressed my fingers together as she sighed, her pretty features crimped with disappointment. Sadly, I was wrong. Can you tell me why gold didn't change back like everyone else? How can the curse be broken? I was worried Lord Deluxe might not have a change of heart, so I created a second key with gold's heart. What? The toy maker pointed at my chest. I felt a strange warmth like a small heartbeat against mine. Surprised, I reached into my shirt and pulled out the locket my mother gave me so long ago. My locket? That locket used to belong to Gold Deluxe. She gave it to your mother as a gift. Your mother was a kind woman. I didn't curse her like the others.
Instead, I sent her home with Gold's heart and the locket. I erased all her memory of working for the Deluxe, leaving only a message that it must be returned to someone someday.
Wait. Gold's heart is in my locket? I quickly took it off and held it in my hands. Within my palms, I felt that same warm heartbeat.
I was supposed to send your mother back when the Lord Deluxe died, but Rua... she wasn't in very good health at the time.
My heart ached upon remembering how my once healthy and cheerful mother was plagued by a terrible illness over a year ago.
I'm sorry for what happened to Rua.
I remember Mother used to tell me stories about how much she loved her previous work. That she wished she could introduce me to the wonderful children she cooked for. I never knew she was working for the Deluxe family, but now that I do, I'll definitely find a way to save them. So please, tell me how to break the curse.
Aura, this is why I came to you. Something has happened with the curse.
I looked away from my locket and stared at the toy maker confused. Her pretty features were full of concern. What do you mean?
The curse was supposed to break if the locket came within the same room as Gold. As you noticed, everyone else turned back. However...
The toy maker tipped her head at my hands.
Look at your locket. What do you see?
I hesitated, not sure what she expected me to see, but I did look as she asked. Oh, it has more rust on it.
Yes. You see, Aura, Gold is a pure metal.
Waving a slender hand in the shape of a symbol, the toy maker created a faint image of Gold. I only knew it was her because I've seen a picture of her in her room.
That locket is made of pure gold. It might have tarnished over time, but it should not have rusted.
Gold gave me a bright smile before fading away. I held the locket close to my chest. So then, what could have caused it?
There is a distressed heart who wishes the curse to remain. Its emotional turmoil got tangled in my magic, and it seems the locket was affected. Until that heart is healed, the rust in the locket will not clear, and it will remain sealed.
The first one I thought of was Soul. But why would he make such a wish when he longs to see his sister again? Yet I was sure the heart in distress was Soul's. I couldn't prove it, but that's what I felt inside, since I was on his route. Gently I held my locket out again. I gazed at the dark rust clinging to what must have been a pretty golden locket once upon a time. The longer I looked at it, the more certain I became. So, if I can clear the rust from the locket, I can break the curse.
Yes, Aura. If you're able to change that person's wishes, the rust should disappear.
I nodded with a determined smile on my face. Sweeping the locket back around my neck, I thanked the toy maker for her help.
A piece of advice to consider, Aura Renali.
I paused, both curious and concerned about what she was going to say.
It isn't always about cutting the chains of the past. They could lead you to the answer you've been searching for.
Follow the chain instead of cut the chain? Back to the source. I looked at myself in the mirror, wondering if everything I just dreamt was true. I didn't really believe the toy maker was a bad person, but she'd caused such distress to everyone in this household. It was confusing. I wanted to be angry at her, but I understood why she was unhappy with their father. His spirit still haunted the household. The distressed heart had to be Soul's. His eyes, both teddy bear and human, betrayed such sadness even as he smiled and spoke with polite reason. And yet, I was still not sure why would Soul make such a wish. I needed to find the answer soon, but first, I still had that problem between the brothers. Maybe the argument between Soul and Deon is because of the heirdom and what it is doing to Soul.
With all due respect, Lady Aura, my older brother is the reason I'm trapped in this role at all.
As I stared hard at the mirror, I decided I needed to find out what was causing the dissonance between the two brothers. Maybe it wouldn't break the curse, but I hoped I could clear the air and bring them back together again. But I can't give up just yet. Crossing my arms and sighing, I tried to think of who I was going to talk with. I should talk with... Oh, interesting. Well, this is probably a fairly obvious one. Soul's the one we need to talk to. It is his route after all, so I guess I'll go talk to Deon. Since Deon was the oldest sibling, it made sense to try and talk to him. He knew more about the Deluxe family expectations than I did, so he could offer context that I was missing. That and Deon was the one who said he missed the old soul. Deon did come off as irresponsible in a lot of ways, but I felt it in my heart that he genuinely cared for his little brother. Maybe if we worked together, we could help set Soul free. The trouble was, I hadn't the slightest idea where Deon was hiding. This all might be for naught. He'd gotten better at disappearing since their argument, so trying to find him was a daunting task. After a half hour of searching, I was still no closer to my answers. I tried his room and the library, facing Royal's scowls and insistence that Deon wasn't there, and he wasn't in the garden or Gold's room. Discouraged, I sat down on the stairs to try and think of where to go next. Before I had the chance, I saw Lily dashing through the hall. She looked distraught. Lily? What's wrong? Lily didn't stop, so I ran to catch up with her. Lily?
Oh, Miss Aura, it's awful! Prince Soul has a high fever! Royal just found him unconscious in his room.
A cold feeling pierced my heart at her news. I ran along with Lily, neither of us saying another word. Oh, great. Just another thing. I could have looked after him, but no. I went on a wild goose chase for Deon. Soul remained asleep for almost a day. Everyone agreed that his lack of sleep and his working nonstop was the cause of the fever. I stayed by Soul's bedside for most of it, leaving only to make quick meals for everyone. Gingerly removing the cloth on his forehead, I held my fingers to Soul's cheek. His temperature still seemed high, but his skin was no longer too hot to touch. I finished changing his cloth.
How is he?
I was so busy tending to Soul that I didn't notice Lily had come in. He still has a fever, but he seems better than before. Lily looked at Soul with a sad expression.
Prince Soul. This is the first time I've seen him like this.
Her eyes began to shimmer with tears, but she quickly wiped them away.
Miss Aura, please save him from his pain.
Lily.
I don't know why, but I can feel it in my heart. I know you're the only one who can make him feel better again.
I could only smile at her. Can we just hug you forever? I wanted to tell her I wanted to save Soul as much as she wanted me to. But I was no more useful than I'd been since coming to the mansion.
We'll be outside if you need us.
Thank you.
And Miss Aura, I'm entrusting him to you now.
Ah! Oh, Lily. Lily, too precious for this world. I hope she starts to feel better soon. Maybe she can move on. A little. I didn't understand what she meant. I opened my mouth to ask, but Lily already left the room. Oh. My dear. Talk to me, my dear. Soul's long eyelashes fluttered. It seemed at first he was waking up, but he then whimpered without opening his eyes. Is he still asleep? Dreaming, maybe. The answer was then made clear. I don't understand. Soul? I called out to him, but Soul didn't answer me. He pressed his lips together, but the lower one trembled. When he moved his head, I saw his eyelashes were damp. What did I do? Soul, it's just a dream. He didn't seem to hear me, his voice strained with emotion as his dream carried on. What did I do to make you hate me, big brother? My eyes widened. I thought he might have been dreaming about his father again, but this was actually about Deon. Reaching over with my other hand, I gently shook his shoulder. Soul, Deon could never hate you. Please, wake up. It took quite a bit of coaxing before I saw those jeweled green eyes look up at me. When he finally did, they were wet with tears. Soul? Oh, Lady Aura. His mouth swept into a smile, cracked by exhaustion, and yet still sweet. Have you been here long? I nodded, patting his hand before bringing my hands onto my lap. The warmth in his gaze made my heart momentarily distracted. Seeing the sadness buried deep in those eyes kept me on track, though. I wanted to ask about his dream, but I thought it might upset him more. You gave us a scare, Soul. You need to take better care of yourself. I'm sorry. When I work, I don't have to think about things. My chest tightened when he said that. The weight on his shoulders was immense, but I didn't know how to convince him to share the burden. Soul, I made some chicken and vegetable soup. You really should eat. I shifted my chair back so that I could go retrieve the soup from the kitchen, but before I could stand up, Soul's hand wrapped around mine. I'm fine. Just stay here a little longer. The warmth of his hand clung to my fingers. I hadn't realized how big or gentle his hands were. Well, all right. As long as you eat something soon. We sat like this for a while. I tried not to think about my hand being enveloped in Soul's. I knew he just wanted a bit of comfort and didn't let myself assume anything. I tried to bring up the subject of Soul's dream several times, but the moment I looked at his face, I lost the words. Even though the sadness was seeping through his smile, I could tell Soul was trying to act like everything was fine. Soul, you really should eat something to regain your strength. Maybe you're right, Lady Aura. Huh. Soul closed his eyes. I must be unwell if I think this curse is a good thing. Because during those years, I was only a teddy bear. Now that I'm human again, the weight of my responsibility is back. When the curse ends, I'll have to be the deluxe heir again. Am I being selfish? Soul smiled at me, but the way his shoulders trembled, I knew how much pain he was in. I finally got the answer to my question, but what was I supposed to do now? Feed that boy some chicken soup, I guess. I don't know what to do. I wandered the halls of the mansion, unable to escape the echo of Soul's confession. I know Soul didn't want the curse to bind everyone indefinitely. He just wasn't strong enough to break free by himself. I had to help him somehow. But how? What could I possibly do to free him? I don't know how long I roamed before I passed by a special set of doors. A strange thought came to me and I stepped inside. Gold's room was still in perfect condition, not a curtain or pillow out of place. I hadn't been in here since Soul welcomed me to meet Gold. I suddenly felt anxious, not knowing where to look or stand. Gosh, this is so weird. Am I really going to ask a doll for help? Oh. Oh, this is the option that people were telling me about in the comments. But like, try seemed like a good thing to do, but apparently that locks you onto the normal end, so... Weird. Yeah, I would have thought that trying would be the good option. So thank you guys for warning me about that below. I guess we'll try. Pushing my skepticism aside, I stepped into Gold's room and approached her. I didn't have any options left. However, as I stared into her glass eyes, the blue still so innocent and yet empty without her heart, the doubt came rushing back. I felt like a fool. Just because I heard her voice once didn't mean I could communicate with her. I started towards the door, defeated and concerned for the fate of the Deluxe household. I couldn't break the curse, and now I couldn't figure out how to help Soul and Deon. I knew they weren't expecting anything of me, but after what the toy maker said, I also knew the burden rested on my shoulders. Still, I needed to be realistic. Gold was trapped in doll form, so I couldn't expect her to help me. I should find Deon and talk to him. As I left the room, a small voice called out from behind me.
Aura.
There she is. Spinning around, I saw a faint image of Gold just inside the door. I blinked several times, but she didn't disappear.
This way.
Gold waved her hand at me as she stepped towards a large closet. The doors were teak and the handles pure ivory. I was a little afraid to touch something so elegant, but Gold disappeared into the doors, forcing me to follow her inside. To Narnia we go. It was hard to get through the rows of dresses, now too small for the youngest Deluxe child to wear when she became human again. Eventually, I found Gold amongst the clothes, pointing up at the ceiling. She glanced up at me with a peculiarly sad expression, but faded away before I could ask why. I had to fight with the clothes a little more, using shelves and rods to lift myself high enough to grab the dangling rope attached to the door handle. I somehow managed to pull out a fold-down ladder and then continued into an attic, so this is where he's been hiding. It was fairly bright in the attic space because of a few windows on the short walls and the roof above. Dust motes floated through the air, even though I moved slowly around the boxes and support beams. Gold? Are you here? I whispered for Gold, but I didn't see her again. However, when I glanced around, I found someone totally unexpected.
Deon?
Napping against a support beam was Deon. His arm was resting on a treasure chest, and his head was tipped back in slumber up until I called his name. Startling awake, Deon flinched.
Aura, how did you find this place?
Believe me or not, it was Gold who led me here. Deon looked puzzled and opened his mouth as if he was about to reply, but he quickly shook his head, dismissing whatever he was going to say. Is this where you've been every day? Deon flushed and looked down at the floor, resembling a child who got caught doing something he shouldn't be.
Not every day.
I saw his arm tighten around the treasure chest at his side. Curious, I stepped over to where he was sitting and knelt in front of him. What is this, Deon? Though he hesitated at first, Deon looked at me, then at the chest, and with a sigh, moved to open it. Despite his small smile, he couldn't hide the sadness from his face. Inside the chest was a collection of photographs and craft projects. There were so many memories contained in here. I picked up a fabric of Deon pretending to model a dress Soul had made out of lots of scrap fabric. Aw, you two are so cute.
Soul and I used to be really close. We'd tell each other everything. He was always full of great ideas. I envied his natural creativity.
When I turned to Deon, there was a nostalgic look on his face. There was a brightness about him as he shifted through the chest contents.
I probably shouldn't tell you what I'm about to say, but for some reason I feel like I can trust you.
I flinched when Deon's fingers brushed against my cheek, catching me off guard. Hold on a second there, sir. Your turn is coming. I thought he was going to start flirting with me, as he had been since I got here. But he just pulled his hand back and looked into the chest again.
The truth is, I took being the Deluxe heir very seriously. I worked hard to keep our father satisfied. These pictures only represent a fraction of my life, the few moments I allowed myself to choose my family.
Sunlight was reflected in Deon's damp eyes. He continued back into the past, revealing so many chains that controlled them. It was a wonder this family could move freely at all. It made me reconsider what I thought about the toy maker's decision. Such a cruel man. How long have these two brothers been torn apart by something so trivial?
Soul was always a kind person. He'd smile and take care of everything, even if he was unhappy and hurting inside.
Deon fell against my shoulder. I blushed at the sudden contact, but he seemed to need the comfort, so I patted his head and ran my fingers through his hair.
I'm a failure as an older brother. I've always known that Sol was hiding so much pain behind his smile. But even after the curse settled into our lives and our father died, I never tried to fix things. I called Sol a puppet all the time, but in reality, I am still just as much a pawn in my father's game as Sol is.
So, your irresponsible behavior was just an act? One your father imposed to make his decisions seem legitimate? So he never wanted you to be the heir. Why? I'm starting to wonder now if Deon's from another mom? Or something? Maybe... I'll wait. That's my theory. Two different moms? Deon gave a small nod, his shoulders hitching. It hurt seeing him like this.
I guess I fell so deep into the routine that it became a natural response, even after 7 cursed years.
It's not too late, Deon. I honestly think the best option is to break tradition. Just continuing on with this nonsense is no good. I'll choose this, but I think this is gonna be the real deal. Ask to resume as the heir. Deon slumped against the support beam, his brows angled with regret. He didn't meet my gaze.
It isn't so easy, Aura. I gave up my right to be heir to suit my father's plan. It's Sol's decision now, and I'm sure you've seen how unbreakable his sense of responsibility is.
I opened my mouth to argue, but stopped before a single word escaped. Deon was right. In all these years, Sol hadn't run away from the role of being heir, even though his true passion was to be a clothing designer. He said he was haunted by his father's expectations, but those expectations could only bother him if he felt responsible in fulfilling them. Isn't there something you can say to him to change his mind?
I'm not so sure.
Why? Deon looked away, ashamed.
I haven't been a trustworthy brother to him. I don't think he'd listen to what I have to say.
I hesitated at the defeat in Deon's words. It was obvious neither of them wanted to be trapped in the role of the Deluxe heir any longer. But I didn't understand why they were being so resistant to the change. As I glanced back into the treasure chest of memories, the toymaker's words came back to me.
It isn't always about cutting the chains of the past.
I didn't understand what she meant then. But the longer I stared at the photographs of Sol and Deon, smiling and embracing each other when they had not only been good friends but also close brothers, the answer was suddenly clear. Of course, it's no longer about who is the heir. I can't just free them from the strings binding them in the present. I need to repair the bond they used to have before it was broken by family politics. Shifting the pictures delicately with my fingers, I found another one with Sol, Deon, and Gold all smiling and posing together. Gold was caught in a sandwich hug by her brothers, and I have never seen anyone happier than that young girl right there. That's so cute. Deon, Sol had a dream the other day. In his sleep, he asked what he did to make you hate him. Deon recoiled at my words, his eyes wide and watery.
What? So, really said that?
It was hard to nod at Deon's heartbroken expression. I handed him the picture I found and did my best to smile through the pain in my chest. You're his older brother, Deon. If you don't think he trusts you, then work hard so that he can. I know it's scary, admitting the mistakes you've made, but isn't having your family back worth facing your fears? For a while, we sat in silence. Deon looked conflicted for a while, but eventually he did smile. To my surprise, he even chuckled a bit.
Well, well. It's no wonder Soul's in love with you.
My body froze up, my vision going blurry before heat shot up to my face. It felt like I caught Soul's fever. What are you saying? Where did that even come from? Deon just laughed harder, his smile brighter than I'd seen it before. I tried to laugh too, but my heart was beating hard at what he just said. Just then, it was suddenly hard to face him.
You'll understand soon enough.
Deon leaned back and stared at the photograph. I knew he needed some time alone to think, so I held back on asking him to explain what he meant. I'm going to go make dinner. See you soon, I hope.